Well, to no one's surprise, the government body responsible for looking at the UK infrastructure and saying, does it need, investing in or upgrading or watchdog stuff that they do, watchdog stuff. But yeah, they are responsible for looking at what the government are doing, how they are doing it, and more particularly, how they go about it. And of course, they have come forward recently with this, saying, look, you need to spend about £30 billion with a B to make sure that we have infrastructure fit for the future. Now, we've always said infrastructure is not just, it's not just public transport. It's sort of power infrastructure into the national grid. It's water ways. It's sewage works. It's just a ton of stuff that is desperately needed. And part of this, of course, is because remember, we've had a government who has really driven hard on a pro-austerity agenda, meaning that none of the usual infrastructure projects that would normally happen have either been slashed or just cut completely. So UK infrastructure is not as good as it should be. And this is, of course, a fault of austerity. And they were warned about the need to invest in these types of things, these types of projects. And of course, it's not like they listened to anyone when it came down to it. Should we be surprised? No, of course. This is how they have acted since the beginning when it has come to this. And it's how they have, well, continued to put up on this. I mean, bear in mind, they've cancelled HS2, but that was too expensive. But here you have just an expensive project in upgrading the UK infrastructure. And bear in mind, HS2 was, 36 billion? This is 30 billion. It's only, slightly cheaper. I say slightly. But that's going to cause a huge issue as to whether the Conservatives are actually going to bother to invest in this infrastructure, because time and time again, they have shown they are not interested in investing in infrastructure in the UK. They are just not interested. So I highly, highly doubt this is going to go through, because if 36 billion was, quote, too expensive to build HS2, then what's 30 billion going to be to the Conservatives? They aren't going to do it. And they know they're not, because we've got an election probably within the next 12 months. So the chances of them actually doing that are slim to none. So let's have a look at what this watchdog had to say and what recommendations they make to the government. And of course, more importantly, will the government actually follow through on any of these recommendations? I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to hold my breath. So as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and an affiliation link called Buy Me Coffee, Waking Well, Buy Me Coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button, there's the Patreon page, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So let's go over to The Guardian, have a look at this, see what they've got here. So the title is UK Infrastructure Needs More Investment, says government advisors. The UK's infrastructure needs a big cash injection, with public transport, home heating, and water networks all in dire need of renewal, and independent government advisors have said. The investments of about 30 billion a year from the taxpayer and about 40 billion to 50 billion a year from the private sector would result in the savings to the average household of at least over £1,000 a year, and higher economic productivity and a better quality of life in the future, the National Infrastructure Commission has said. So instantly, once we always said this, when you invest in something, you get a benefit. You always get a benefit from this. And they have laid it out here. You would see at least an extra boost of a household income by over £1,000 a year, and would result in also higher economic productivity and a better quality of life. We've always said this. It doesn't matter how expensive something is. You've got to look at what the end cost is going to be, especially when you look at big costs to the infrastructure, because you get these massive benefits, and it's not like someone can come along and just take them away. That ain't going to happen. But obviously the Conservatives, oh no, we can't spend this, we can't spend that. You've got such massive opportunities here to actually be able to do something, and of course they continue not to. The UK is pretty much falling apart because they refuse to spend on this. We saw with the whole rack concrete crisis in schools, in hospitals, in prisons, indeed. And that was because, you know, they knew it needed doing and they didn't want to spend the money. Anyway, let's see what they also had to say. They also said an overhaul of energy is at the heart of this report, aiming to generate more from renewable sources while ensuring that the base supply load from gas-fired power stations equipped with carbon capture storage technology. Installing heat pumps for nearly all households and upgrading insulation at a cost of $3.2 billion a year will also be key. Highly doubt that will happen. We've had in the UK under the Tories a insulation program. They barely insulated any households, whereas France went great guns on this with home insulation, and they insulated billions of households. And I always say this: you've got to look at our current government, who just does not seem to really care, versus, you know, governments in Europe which actually do stuff, and then shockingly they get an economic benefit. You know, I know that the concept isn't. It must be insane for our government to hear. It also continues. It says cars and roads alone will not be enough to keep transport moving, and far greater investment in public transport is also needed. The panel of experts found that in another 222-page report that took more than over 2 years to complete, this is only the second of such a 5-yearly infrastructure report since the NIC was set up in 2015 by the then Chancellor George Osborne. So John Armitt, the chair of the NIC, called on the government to take urgent action, saying that the good news is that modern, reliable infrastructure can support economic growth, help tackle climate change, and enhance natural environment, he said. People often talk about infrastructure as the backbone of our economy. What our infrastructure needs now is the collective mettle to actually turn commitments into action, and we will reap the rewards for decades to come. What we always say about infrastructure: if you invest in it, you get the economic benefits. It ain't going to be happening. But here are some of the other decisions that the report said. And I think some of these, of course, the government are not going to really do this. So here's what some of the other pinpoints they got. So substantial investment in public transport for England's biggest cities, and must be accompanied by restrictions on cars' access to alleviate congestion. Again, the current government's not going to go for that. Hydrogen must not be used for home heating. Despite the government enthusiasm for the technology, hydrogen should be exploited for use in heavy industry. That will be actually pretty good, getting hydrogen into heavy industry, particularly the steel industry. Something we've talked about before, about decarbonisation of the steel industry. Next part, people on lower incomes should have heat pumps installed for free, while the other 2/3 of households should receive subsidies of over £7,000 for each for their installation. Upgrading homes with the highest level of insulation is not needed before installing heat pumps. Water meters should be compulsory for households and businesses. No new waste incinerators should be built, and recycling rates need to improve. And of course, this is the best one. The decision to cancel the northern leg of HS2 was, quote, deeply disappointing and leaves a major gap in the UK's rail strategy. Armitt said that it would result in an overload of the West Coast Main Line and encourage more people and freight onto the roads. What have we said about how important HS2 really was to this, to UK infrastructure, and to get that up and running? Is the government going to follow any of the advice? No. Maybe they'll say something nice and pretty, but at the end of the day, nothing will get rolled out. Nothing will happen. Oh, it's too expensive, or instead of 30 billion. Here's, 15 million to do it. To do all that with 15 million. Do all that with a considerable less amount of money. I wonder how well all that's going to work out. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, we'll see you all next time.